Hi BookTube, my name is Sarah and welcome to the Bookish Knitter. Today I am coming to you with a weekly reads video. This is for week number 44 and it's October 31st through November the 6th. So I finished 7 books this week, you guys. Yay, very exciting. So I want to talk about, of course, all those books. Links will be in the description box below if you want to jump ahead to any of the book reviews that I have. I'm also going to talk about what I am currently reading, and I do have a little physical book haul sitting here beside me. I placed an order with Harlequin, but these are not category. These are Harlequin books, but they are single title. So I want to talk about those and show them to you guys as well, because they're all holiday. And, you know, in case you guys are looking for holiday reads, even though I haven't, I'll get into them in a minute. I'll get into them in a few minutes. So, it's Sunday, the 7th of November. It is, for those of you who do this, because I know it's not everybody, but we fell back, the time change. So right now, my computer says it's 8:06 in the morning. It's, you know, my body's telling me it's 9 o'clock. And I have a super busy day, which is why I'm sitting here this early in the morning. Brie and I have an interview at 11:30 with an author, a heartwarming author for the podcast. And then Brie and I are going to be on somebody else's podcast, which is super exciting. I think that will come out in December. I'll keep you guys updated to when that's going to be up. And we're going to be kind of talking with her, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So I wanted to get this video done so I could spend, at least after the second interview this afternoon, like around 2-ish this afternoon, I can actually sit and relax. Which will be nice, because it's Sunday, you guys. It's Sunday. I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm not complaining. It's a good problem to have, you know, doing these interviews and things like that. But, you know, I just kind of miss having, like, a lazy Sunday. But that's okay. It's okay. So the other thing, clearly I have been amiss for doing videos during the work week, like during the week. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. The end of the month tends to be a lot busier for me at work. I'm not going to make any promises, but I do have 2 videos that I would like to do. What I'm thinking is, depending on how long the second interview takes today, I may sit down and quickly film, because they're not very long videos. I may quickly sit down and film those, or I might do them tomorrow night, like after work or something like that, because my first big issue was, you know, doing the vlogs, that at night it's dark. And even now with the time change, it's going to be even darker earlier, right? So by the time I get home and all those fun things. However, I forgot I have a ring light. I could use that. So I may give that a try tomorrow night. We shall see. Or I might just do it tonight. I don't know. We shall see. But I do apologize. I mean, these, in my opinion, these are my favorite, like, these are my most important videos and the ones I really want to make sure I get out. Because the whole reason I'm here on BookTube is to talk to you guys about the books I've been reading, right? So, yeah. So the other thing I got thinking, because I do have time in the morning, is what I might do is actually film them tomorrow morning. And then I can just edit after work. You know what? Maybe I'll do that. Because I'll just be nice, fresh, and chipper first thing in the morning. I think that's what I'm going to do. So be on the lookout this week. I'm going to, fingers crossed, I'm going to have my Harlequin book haul, my digital book haul, as well as my October wrap-up. So, yay. Anyway, on to the books that I finished over this last week. So on October 31st, the last book I finished in the month of October was A Season with the Witch by J.W. Ocker. I gave this 4.5 stars. It originally came out in October of 2016, and this was a nonfiction book. So right before nonfiction November started, I finished a nonfiction book. This one took me a while to read. I did not anticipate it taking me as long as it took me, and it wasn't anything with the book. Clearly, I gave it 4.5 stars. It comes in at, what, like 315 pages. I mean, it's not a long book, but with nonfiction, I tend to read it slower and kind of savor it a little bit more, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I've talked about this book a couple of times. This is, like I said, it's nonfiction. It's a travel, historical. I don't know where you'd actually, like, categorize this. It says occult/travel, so that sounds legitimate. But also a lot of history is in here as well. So J.W. Ocker takes his wife and his 2 young girls, and they go to Salem, Massachusetts, and spend the entire month of October there. And it's pretty much that October, like who he talks to, what he does. He talks at great length at the beginning about the Salem witch trials. He talks, of course, because that's kind of what Salem, that's Salem. Like, if you think about Salem, that's what you're thinking about. It's witch city, right? And then he talks about, how this one event that took place over 9 months, 300 years later, or 300 plus years later, spawned this entire cottage industry in this town, in this small port town in Massachusetts, So he goes to see some of the graves of the judges that were participated in the witch trials. He goes to locations, certain spots. He talks about different museums, monster museums. He talks with locals, like, what do you think about this? There's a whole thing here on pirates, witches and pirates, which was a great chapter. There's some great pictures in here as well. I'm just trying to see here what else I can find. Fictitious witches. He does a whole chapter talking about part of the chapter is about the movie Hocus Pocus, where there's some of the exterior shots in that movie were shot in Salem. Along with for anyone who's been to Salem, there's a very famous statue of, just down Essex Street, of Elizabeth Montgomery. So he talks about like those witches and how they are like a part of Salem lore and stuff like that. Like, it was really, and then he talks with real witches, modern day pagans, Wiccans, what their thoughts are. He does actually do an interview with Laurie Cabot, which is like the most famous witch in Salem. I've read some of her books. She's fantastic. So yeah, this was a delight for me. I really, really, really liked it. I thought it was fantastic. It's one that I could absolutely see myself rereading again. And what it really did more than anything is made me want to go back to Salem. I have been 2019, I think. I went in May of 2019 just for like a half a day. Because that was actually, for those of you who have been watching my channel for a while, that's when I met Steve Donahue. So I went to the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival that weekend. That was my whole point of going to the States and going to like that area. And I was actually staying in, was it New Hampshire? I bet New Hampshire. I don't remember where I was staying. But I was meeting up with Steve, but he had to actually work. I know, right? Like, come on. He always makes fun of the rest of us for having these things called jobs. And then he had to go and, like, be busy that morning. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do to entertain myself? Go to Salem. I've always wanted to go. So I was only there for, like, 2 or 3 hours. And I pretty much just went to the main shopping street, Essex Street, and just kind of wandered around and went to the shops and stuff. And I do want to go back, and I told my husband that. So what we'd like to do, I don't think I'd ever go in October just because of the craziness and how expensive it would be. Like, that's their prime tourist season, right? Like, everything is going to be double the price. So I'd rather go in like May or June or something like that. So I think that's what we might try and do maybe next year, the year after. Go down for like a week, go to Cape Cod, go to Boston, go to Salem. I can spend a day or two there because I really want to see the museums as well. That's like the big thing I want to go to. Like the witch house, I think is what it's called. The big, is it a reproduction? I think. I don't know. But just to do some of the more, not necessarily touristy stuff, but more of the historical type stuff, and go see some of the outlying cities as well, because he talks about some of the outlying cities like Danvers, which people don't associate necessarily with the Salem witch trials, but yet that was Salem Village way back when, before, you know what I mean? Anyway, it was good. If you have any sort of interest in that or in travel logs or anything like that, I recommend giving this one a try. I really thought it was interesting, and it was the perfect time of year to finish it. And finishing it on Halloween, I was sitting out in my garage, handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters, and this is what I was reading. So, I mean, it was very appropriate. So, the very first book that I finished in the month of November, I loved. I absolutely love this, you guys. I read Broken by Jenny Lawson, another nonfiction. I gave this book 5 stars. This came out in April of 2021, and it was narrated on audio by Jenny Lawson. So, yeah, I do have a physical copy, but I did listen to it from my library on audio because she narrates it, and she's a delight. So I don't know really what to say about this because, I mean, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I loved all of her books. But there's, it's not like it's a story. It's more of a memoir, blog post entries, little essays, where she talks about a range of different topics and things like that. So yeah, but what I love is that there's chapters that will have you absolutely like snorting laughing, like I was anyway. And then the next chapter will be something very, very poignant and something that will really make you think. And I had that in the car. I mean, I was driving to work the one day and I was just like laughing hysterically. And then the next chapter came. And in that chapter, I think it was titled like an open letter to my health insurance policy. And it goes on to talk about how like she suffers from a lot of different mental illnesses and she suffers from very severe depression. And her psychiatrist, I guess, or one of her doctors wanted to put her on a drug that was going to help because she was having suicidal thoughts. And her insurance company wouldn't cover the cost. Like she explained, this is a drug that was going to literally save my life. And they wouldn't cover it. So she had to pay it out of pocket, right? And I mean, like she says in this letter, thankfully she had the money to do that. But how many people don't? And, you know, like that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about in this, like that she talks about in this book, and how she gets very poignant and stuff, and addressing a lot of issues that people with mental health would deal with. And I mean, beyond the whole mental health aspect, if you just have a health condition that your insurance provider will not cover the cost of a medication for you, that's terrifying. That is absolutely, that to me is the same thing as telling a cancer patient, I'm sorry, we're not going to cover the chemo. But I have to keep reminding myself that I don't understand the medical system in the US. It's different than it is here in Canada. I mean, yes, I do have insurance through work, but we have universal health care. So if I get sick and I go to the hospital, my first concern is not how much is this going to cost me. My first concern is, okay, am I going to be okay? That's what I can focus on. I don't have to think. I've had friends who are in the States who have hurt themselves, who will weigh the pros and cons of the cost of going to see either urgent care or the emergency room or what have you. And that is terrifying to me. Terrifying. You know, people joke to me all the time because I talk about my love of Boston and New England, and you should move to the States. Not in a million years. There's no way. With my health, there is absolutely no way. I would never get covered by any insurance provider. Never. They would cover me for everything except cardiac. I'm sure. And there's a part that she talks about that in this book as well, that, you know, she talks about life insurance and her husband's like, we couldn't cover you. Like, it was going to be a ridiculous amount of money to cover you for life insurance because of her health problems. And I'm like, girl, I feel you on that. I'm the same way. I will never get life insurance because of that reason. You know, they would cover me probably for everything else. But like I said, I have insurance through work. And up here, just in case you guys, like, we have universal health care. So if I get sick, I go to the hospital, I get fixed. I don't have to worry about the cost of surgery, the cost of medications at the hospital, the cost of procedures, the cost of any of those things associated with. However, I do have insurance through work, which means for my medications, they're covered. If not, I would have to pay all my medicines out of pocket. If I didn't have insurance through work, I would have to pay out of pocket for that. In terms of the hospital, the way the insurance works is that if I get sick and I end up in the hospital and I have no insurance, I go into a ward room. Like if I have to stay, I go into a ward which has like typically 4 or 6 beds to the room. If you have private insurance through your job or you pay it yourself out of pocket, then you could get like a semi-private or a private room, which at the end of the day, I don't care. The care is all exactly the same. It just depends how many people I have to talk to in that room if I'm in the hospital. I kind of like the wards. They don't bother me, you know, like I've been in, most of the time I'm in semi-private because that's what my insurance will cover, but, which is nice too, but really, I don't care at the end of the day, to be completely honest. And along with dental and vision, those are other things that are covered by my private insurance, like through work. But outside of that, like I've never, ever, ever had to think about the cost involved in having any sort of medical procedure done. And, you know, reading this book really kind of, certain chapters of this book really made me think about that. So, anyway, sorry, that was an entire tangent on the healthcare system. And, you know, I consider myself very, very fortunate that I was born in a country that's something that my parents didn't have to worry about when I was born. That they didn't have to try and figure out how much surgery for their infant daughter was going to cost them and whether or not they were going to have to go bankrupt to do it. You know what I mean? So my heart goes out to all my American friends who might have to deal with something like that, or any health scare like that. So yeah, at the end of the day, I loved this. If you have not read Jenny Lawson yet, you should read her. Her first 2 books, Let's Pretend This Never Happened and Furiously Happy, were also 5-star reads for me. So I love her stuff. Definitely check it out. Next up, let's get on to some little bit lighter topics. Sorry about that, you guys. So the next book that I finished was The Widow's Christmas Surprise by Jenna Jaxon. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Thank you very much to NetGalley and to Zebra Publishers for sending me an e-art copy of this one to read and review. This is book 5 in the Widow's Club series. Publication date September of 2020, so it came out last year. Historical romance, and this was narrated on audio by Anne Floninsky. So I did borrow this one on audio from my library, and I didn't love this one, to be completely honest. The story was interesting. So the story is about our main characters, Maria and Hugh. And Maria was married young, like she was like 16. She got married, and her husband, like the next day, went to go fight in the Battle of Waterloo, and then promptly died, was killed in the Battle of Waterloo. So she is now, at 16 years old, a widow, right? So she then ends up later on meeting this man, who's a earl, and they kind of fancy each other, and they have a little bit of extracurricular fun, and she ends up pregnant. So then they get married, and he is still dallying with other women. So he's not being very faithful to her. So I didn't like him off the bat. And as somebody else said in a review, we were glad he was killed. He died before the end of the prologue. So he gets killed in a duel because somebody challenges to a duel because he was messing around with somebody's sister. So anyway, she's pregnant. Like our main character, Maria, is pregnant. And her husband is now dead. Her second husband is now dead. I'd be worried about this girl if I were you. And now, she was only 18 now, okay? So they didn't know if she was going to have a boy or a girl. And of course, he has an earldom. And that would have been passed to his son had he have had a son. But she gave birth to a little girl. So the first chapter is her pretty much giving birth. And I'm like, okay, so the kid's going to be like kind of a big focus in this one. And she even talks about it now that she's a widow. Again, she can spend time with her little girl, which is great. You know, fantastic. You don't see that a lot in historical because of the time period. For the well-to-do, the aristocracy, is that the word I'm looking for? They didn't look after their own children. They had nannies, and they had governesses, and they had, you know, other people who kind of looked after the kids. They would see them occasionally. It was very much the seen, not heard kind of an idea with the kids. So, you know, they didn't really raise their own children. Other people did that for them. Now, if you were of the middle class or lower class, you know, you look after your kids. But this was clearly a higher class family. So anyway, she has a little girl. So they are no longer entitled to anything unless he had a will. And in the prologue, you do see him writing out a will, but that doesn't come to light till much later in the book. So they find this guy who's like 6 cousins removed, something that he's getting the earldom. So he moves into the house with his wife and his 2 grown sons. And Maria is sent to the dowager's cottage with her daughter and her cousin. Her cousin's kind of like her lady in waiting, like her, what is the word? They call them her companion. So the 2 of them like spent a lot of time together. So then anyway, she ends up meeting this guy named Hugh. And he is the steward to the new earl. He was the steward to the old earl. He's now the steward to the new earl. And they develop a relationship, a friendship that turns into a romance. So my biggest issue with this book was Maria. She was 18. She acted like she was 8. Like, I mean, some of the things she was just so clueless, and she just let people walk all over her, and I just found her extremely young. Extremely young. And then the whole part I was talking about with the kid is like, you know, it's stated in the story, oh, I can spend more time with my child. But then you never see the kid. Like, the kid's only there when advances the plot, which kind of drove me a little crazy. Like, she takes off to London for like 3 days, 4 days. She's like, I gotta go do some stuff. I'll be back. Look after the kid. And I understand that was typical for the time period. I get that. However, as I said already, she states in the book, oh, she's so excited about being a mom and spending all this time with her daughter, and then she doesn't. So that bugged me. Anyway, it is what it is. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. It's just the character really bugged me. And I do want to read more in this series, though, because I really did like the series. So the next book that I finished was Dawn's Big Move by Ann M. Martin. I gave this book 4 stars. It's Babysitter's Club book number 67. Original publication date September of 1993. This is, of course, a middle grade fiction novel, and I did listen to it on audio, narrated by Stephanie Einstein. So this one was good. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. This is about the halfway point through the Babysitter's Club series. And Dawn has made the decision to go back to California for 6 months. So the next book will be them finding a new babysitter to kind of replace Dawn in a way. So what I really liked about this one was the whole decision aspect for her. Now, she's only 13, and the whole backstory is that her parents divorced, her mother moved back to her small hometown of Stony Brook. Her dad stayed in California, so Dawn and her brother moved with their mother to Stony Brook. So within a few months, Jeff, the brother, really was hating it. He missed his dad. He missed California. So he went back. So now the family's split in two. We have Dawn and her mom in Connecticut, and Jeff and the dad in California. So Dawn's been really, really missing them, and she decides she would like to go back, but only for 6 months. Because she doesn't want to do it permanently, because she would absolutely miss her mom and her new stepsister and her friends in Connecticut. So what I really liked about this one is that the decision that this 13-year-old girl had to make was hard. I mean, to make that decision to leave your mom, you know what I mean? Like, when she moved from California to Connecticut, she didn't have a choice. Her mother got both of the kids in the custody, right? So she didn't have any say or any choice. That's the way it was going to be. But now she was making this decision, and right up until the 11th hour, like the night before that she was supposed to leave, she's like, I'm making a mistake. I shouldn't go. And, I can't imagine having to make that kind of decision to, in a way, choose between your parents. It's not about the location and where you are. It's who you're there with, right? So, yeah, I enjoyed this one. Now, I do have something to ask. For those of you who are Babysitters Club readers or former Babysitters Club readers, why does no one like Dawn? Because I was reading the reviews on Goodreads for this one, and so many people are like, oh, thank God Dawn's gone. We couldn't stand Dawn. And anytime, they do like something like, oh, name your favorite babysitter, people never liked Dawn. I'll be honest. I was a fan of Dawn. I liked her a lot. I liked her individuality. I mean, yeah, she could be a little in your face when it came to things that that were really important to her. Animal cruelty, the environment, things like that. But she was still a lot of fun. And again, for those of you who read the BSC, let me know, why does nobody like Dawn? Because I liked her. The next book that I finished was Kentucky Crime Ring by Julianne Lindsey. I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is book 3 in the Heartland Heroes series. It's Harlequin Intrigue number 2028, publication date October 2021, and this is, of course, a romantic suspense novel. You guys, this was so good. So this was the story of Allison and Derek. So this one starts like right off the bat. You've got the action and adventure. Allison shows up at the home of this older gentleman named Mason, and she helps him because he had a heart attack a number of months ago. So he kind of has some chickens and stuff. So she goes every morning and checks and feeds the chickens and picks up the eggs and kind of helps him like that. And then she notices his back door is open. So she goes into his house to find him dead in like the front hallway. Now, she also has a 12-week-old baby. 12-week-old baby. So she's like, oh crap, there's clearly a killer somewhere. So she tries to sneak back out of the house. And then this guy on an ATV comes after her. So she jumps in her truck to try and leave. And she ends up getting in an accident because she's speeding and there was another vehicle on the road. So she gets in this accident. The guy who was driving the other vehicle was Derek. And he's a local, I think he's a private investigator. So then the story kind of goes from there, that they're trying to find out what happened to Mason, who's after Allison, because clearly she's seen too much. And it does deal with sex trafficking, guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you. This story was really, really good. Really good. I adore Julianne Lindsey's books. I will be reading the 4th book in the series this week. It's actually going to be the book I finish after, or the book I read after I finish this one I'm reading right now. And I will be in the live show with Nicole and Jen and Aaron over on Nicole and Allison, I think, over on Nicole's channel on Wednesday night. So if you want to see our full thoughts, tune in to that. So yeah, I am really, really looking forward to reading the 4th book. You do not have to read these in any kind of order. You can pick them up willy-nilly. I have read all 3 so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series. The next book that I finished was Truly Madly Yours by Rachel Gibson. I gave this book 2.5 stars. Yeah. Didn't like this one, kids. This is the first book in the Truly Idaho series. It was published in January of 99. Contemporary romance. I read this one for the Pass the Parcel Challenge. This was not on my TBR for the month of November, but we needed to read a book from one of the lists on Listopia, and one of the lists was like Strange Inheritance. So this is the story of Delaney and Nick, and I don't want to go on a whole rant about this one because I've watched back, not watched back, but when editing my videos, when I get to a book I don't like, I can go off on that book for 20 minutes. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to waste my time with this one. But essentially, I read, the whole plot of this book is that Delaney, okay, convoluted. So Nick is the illegitimate son of Delaney's stepfather. Okay? So they were not raised together as siblings because the father didn't even acknowledge Nick until he was in his 20s. And Delaney was raised by the dad from the time she was 7. He actually adopted her. So she was his daughter in all intents and purposes. So Nick and Delaney never really got along because Nick always felt like Delaney got what he should have had. The father was very, very wealthy. He was the mayor of town and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he dies. Beginning of the book, he dies. And he's got property, and he's got money, and he's got all these things. And when the will is read, Delaney is entitled to half of his estate if she agrees to stay in this little small town in Idaho for an entire year. So she can't leave, she can't even leave the city limits. Let's put it that way. If she wants to go to the Walmart, the next town over, she can't. So, so Nick is being left this big property by the lake, but in order to get his, he can't sleep with Delaney for a year or whatever it is. So, of course, the entire book is the two of them dancing around each other. So, my biggest issue, now, for one, I always have a hard time with sibling. They're not siblings, and I fully get that there is absolutely zero blood that they share. What bothered me throughout the book, she called him dad. She called what was the guy's name? Was it Henry? She called Henry dad, and Nick called him dad. You're both calling him dad. It's creepy. Stop it. Because you're still going to be dilly-dallying with each other. The other thing that, I think the thing that was even bigger than that was the fact that I did not like Nick or Delaney. I'm sorry. Nick was a man whore. Throughout the entire book, he's sleeping with all these different women. Okay, fine. Once he actually sleeps with Delaney, that stops. But leading up to that, it still bothered me because it was a long way through the book before we got to that part. And Delaney herself was a brat. Oh my God, she was a brat. She was just expecting to whip into town and kind of she's a hairstylist and she was going to open a very fancy salon. And I'm like, this is a small town in Idaho. People are not going to be paying $300 to have their hair cut and colored at this little small town. They can't afford that. So give your head a shake, as my father would have said. Yeah, I struggled through this one, you guys. The only reason I finished it is for the challenge. And then I realized after the fact that I could have DNF'd it at 50%. I could have still counted it for the challenge. Oops. Now I know going forward. So yeah. So anyway, did not care for this one. And it's sad because I like Rachel Gibson. I have read her before. This one just completely missed the mark for me. And I don't anticipate I will not be reading any more in this series. And the last book that I finished this week was Murdered Midas by Charlotte Gray. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This publication date on this one was September of 2019. This is another nonfiction book. And I listened to this one on audio, narrated by Stephen Graybill. So this is the story about a man named Harry Oakes. And he was born in Maine, and then he came to Canada for the gold rush. Came to Northern Ontario. And he traveled all over the world, like, for gold rush. Like, he went to Alaska, he went to California. It talks about time that he spends in the Philippines and wherever. And he eventually strikes gold in a small town in Northern Ontario called Kirkland Lake. And he opens this huge mine, and he becomes very, 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 like, obscenely wealthy. He marries this French woman. I think he has, like, 5 children. And then he has a home in the Bahamas because the tax laws, of course, are quite different. He wants to hold on to his money, right? So then he ends up getting murdered in the Bahamas. And that's kind of the whole, like, the story itself is kind of his life. And then the second half of the book really talks about, like, his murder and the trial and all those things. So I liked this one. However, I found the trial part and the rest of the book after that a little boring. Like, I wasn't interested. I wasn't invested in because, spoiler alert, everybody, they have no idea who killed this guy. Like, the murderer was never caught, essentially. But what I found very interesting, the part that really grabbed me, was the beginning of it. And I think it was because, as a Canadian, they talk a lot about what Canada was like in the 19-teens, like what Ontario was like, Kirkland Lake, how it started to grow to this much bigger town, and what Toronto was even like back then. You know, it wasn't really known for being this financial hub that it is today. I mean, we have an entire huge financial district. My father worked downtown for a brokerage firm for 30 years. But back then, it was more Montreal that was known for that. And then when gold and silver started getting mined and found, then they started opening like a gold exchange or a silver exchange in Toronto. And that's the part that I found really, really interesting. I do have to say the author's writing on this one was really good. It was an engaging story, and she really kind of shared a lot about him while also sharing a lot about the time period and the location. They talk a lot about how a lot of his money went into Niagara Falls, Canada. For anyone who's been to the Canadian side of the falls, not the crappy American side. God bless her, I had a girl that I used to work with, and at this company I used to work for. And she was situated out of Buffalo, New York. And we got talking one time about Niagara Falls, and she's like, yeah. She's like, you know, the Horseshoe Falls are gorgeous, you know, like, I'm so glad that they're ours. I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? She's like, oh yeah, didn't you know the Horseshoe Falls are American? No. The iconic Niagara Falls is on the Canadian side. We had an argument. I made her Google it. She's like, I thought that my whole life that was our side. I'm like, no. So the American side is quite different from the Canadian side. The Canadian side, yes, both sides have a lot of kitsch. Like, we have the Ripley's Museum, and we have, like, a lot of very touristy. There's a ridiculous amount of hotels in Niagara Falls. I mean, it's kind of known as, like, the honeymoon capital, right? I've been quite a number. It's a 2-hour drive for me. But there's a house that Harry Oakes bought and built up on Clifton Hill that overlooks the falls. I mean, talk about prime real estate. And it's still there. And I think it's now become a museum. I looked it up on Google, and it's closed right now, I guess because of COVID. But I would definitely like to visit that at some point. Because when I think Niagara Falls now, I think casinos, hotels, and, like, tourist attractions. Whereas I didn't realize there was this bit of history up there too. So I'm really interested to go back now and see it. So anyway, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad I read it. And I did look up the author, and she's written a couple of other books that I think I would really like too. There's one about a maid who murders this very well-to-do man in Toronto whose last name is Massey, who is, I guess, the family of the people who were named after Massey Hall downtown. But it's a Canadian Toronto thing. But anyway, I like to read that one too. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I liked it. I didn't love it. Let's put it that way. So what am I currently reading? I have currently got 3 books on the go. The first one that I am reading is called Kiss the Girl, and it's by Melanie Jacobson. I'm hoping to finish this one in the next few days. I was on the EARC team for this author for this book. It is a holiday book. It's adorable so far. It's essentially about these 2 people, Grace and Noah, who meet at a friend's wedding, and he's a high school teacher in town, and she is back in town looking after her dad, who was diagnosed with cancer, and he's now getting treatment, and he may potentially go into remission. And once he goes into remission, then she can go back, leave this small town, and go back to what she was doing before with her life. So she's clearly not in town for a relationship because she's going to be leaving. So it is the relationship between her and Noah, and so far I'm really, really liking it. I am also currently reading A Kiss at the Mistletoe Rodeo by Kathy Douglas. This is a Harlequin Special Edition novel. I need to finish this one like in the next couple of hours because this is the book that Brie and I are going to be talking about on the other podcast that we're going to be on. So I needs to get it done. So I will be working on that as soon as I am done. You guys are probably not even going to see this go up till like 7 o'clock tonight because I'm not going to edit it till later this afternoon. And yesterday on audio, I started Beard With Me by Penny Reed, which is the 6th book in the Winston Brothers series. And so far, I'm really, really liking it. Although, it's the story of Billy and Scarlett. But it's when they're in high school. So, it's a little weird. I don't know. I'll give you more of my thoughts on it next week. I don't want to talk too much about it right now. I'll talk more about it next week. But let me show you guys the books that I got in the mail this week. Sorry, friends, my camera just shut off, as usual. It's telling me, hurry it up and finish off so you can finish reading that book. So, here's the books that I got. So, on just before Halloween, so it would have been last Friday, Harlequin did a buy 3, get 3 free sale, and I'm like, oh, yes, please. So, I actually decided to treat myself to some actual physical books. Because it's a buy 3, get 3 free sale, I decided to take advantage of it and spend money that get more bang for my buck, essentially. So I got 6 books here, and I'm very excited about all of them. So 2 of them I've kind of already read, and I didn't realize for the one, but I do know for this one. So I have read this book, but it's a brand new edition, and this is Heather Graham's The Last Noel. And this is part of the best-selling author collection. So what they do here is they have the book by Heather Graham, and then they have a second book in here by a free bonus story included, Secret Surrogate by Dolores Fosen. I do not know if it's a holiday book, but The Last Noel was. Now, The Last Noel was not a category book. It was a single title, and it's very short, like, let me see here. You make a liar out of me? I remember it being short. Like, I have a copy of it over on my shelf behind me. That seems a bit longer than I originally remember. So that's The Last Noel. So I guess it's almost 50-50. But I have a... Do you know what? Hold on. Sorry, I literally had it right behind me. Okay, so it's longer than I thought it was originally. I got this one at a thrift store, actually. But I think the reason why I thought it was so thin, like it's not really, like it's a good size. But it's one of these tiny little, like, hardcovers in comparison to a regular hardcover. But the font on this is like massive. So I did buy this one because, like I said, I've read it before, but I wanted, like, I really like this story. So I decided to pick, why am I showing you this one? So I decided to pick up this one because it's part of, like, the best-selling author collection. And I really do love these collections because it's a great way to get 2 books in one. So this one, I'll just read the back of it for you. With a storm paralyzing New England on Christmas Eve, the O'Boyle household becomes prey to a pair of brutal escape killers desperate to find refuge. Skylar O'Boyle's one hope for rescue is that the men are unaware that her daughter Kat has escaped into the blizzard. But as the wind and snow continue to rage, her prayers for Kat can find some help seem fragile indeed. So, yeah. It was really good, you guys. It was really good. I liked it a lot. If you're into like Christmas with, of course, some great suspense, definitely check that one out. This is the other one that I'd read. I thought I should check these things before I buy them, but it's fine. It's fine. I've read this book in a different edition. Same title in a different edition. So this is Christmas in Mustang Creek by Linda Leo Miller. And I'm loving these oversized mass market paperbacks. Just to show you guys the difference. So there is a standard mass market paperback. So as you can see, it's just a hair taller and a little wider. But this, I mean, yeah, it's a little floppy, but this is floppy. There's just something about that I love. So yeah, so this is one that I've already read, but I did not have a copy of it. I have it on Kindle, but I really like the cover. I don't know why. True Love Gets a Second Chance This Christmas in Mustang Creek. I liked this book quite a bit, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And then these last four, I actually have all of them from NetGalley to read. I haven't gotten to them yet. But my goal is to get to them in December, so you're kind of seeing a little advanced December TBR here maybe. But I decided to buy them in physical edition because they're just so pretty. And again, I love these little mass market max paperbacks. So the first one we have here is Mistletoe Season by Michelle Major. This is part of the Carolina Girls series. So pretty. So it says, spend the holidays in Magnolia, North Carolina, where two lonely hearts find exactly what they need for Christmas. I love this series. I read the first one. I read the series previous to this one. I'm very excited to have that. This one, I'm like, oh. Maisie Yates. Come on, it's Maisie Yates. Rodeo Christmas at Evergreen Ranch. This is part of the Gold Valley series. Look at that cover. Oh. Gold Valley's rodeo champion is facing the toughest challenge of his life, a Christmas wedding. So yes. And then all of these have a bonus short story. And I kind of love that Harlequin is starting to do that. They're adding in these bonus short stories. So, okay, so for this example, the Christmas at Mustang Creek has a bonus novella by Naima Simone called A Kiss to Remember, which is delightful. Like, yay. I will reread just the novella, which is great. The Michelle Major one, bonus novella, has A Carolina Christmas in it, which I think is a prequel to this book or to the series. I don't know. I don't know if I've read it. I'll have to check. The Maisie Yates book, the bonus story included here, Her First Christmas Cowboy, which I think is also by Maisie Yates. It is. Her First Christmas Cowboy. So yeah. I don't know if it's a new story. I don't know if it's a reprint. I'll have to check that out. But yeah. So, Maisie Yates. Oh, love Maisie Yates. And then we have one by Dolores Fosen. This one does not contain a bonus story. These last two don't, but those other ones did. So this one we have here is Christmas at Colts Creek. And this is part of the Lost Ride Texas series. Clearly, I have a theme going on here, people. I have a type. An unexpected inheritance rekindles a red-hot romance just in time for Christmas. Yes, please. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. And then the last one here, I'm really excited. I love the cover on this one. We have First Kiss at Christmas by Lee Tobin McCain. And this is part of the off-season series. And it takes place in Chesapeake Bay. It says, on Chesapeake Bay, you don't need mistletoe for the perfect Christmas kiss. Like, come on, look at that cover. God, it looks beautiful. Oh, I love it. So yeah. So I had to treat myself. Buy 3, get 3 free. Yeah, I wanted to get some of the new releases, the new single title releases from Harlequin. So I'm super glad that I did. But anyway, guys, that is all that I have for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm going to make my goal to record those 2 quick videos tomorrow morning. So you'll probably see those maybe Tuesday and Thursday. I don't know. If not, I am definitely going to do something for Friday. I'm definitely going to do a Friday reads if I don't get to those other 2 videos. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I will talk to you in my next one. Take care and happy reading, everybody. Bye.